Chapter 8. Andrew Ryan's Office, 1950. Miss Lamb, Diane announced. Dr. Sophia Lamb. There was a certain coldness in her voice as she said it, Andrew Ryan noted. Had she already taken a dislike to the woman? Dr. Lamb had been a kind of missionary, both physician and psychiatrist, working in Hiroshima before and after the bomb. Maybe Diane was intimidated? Diane was sensitive about her working-class background. Escort her and have the guards wait outside. Diane sniffed but went back into the outer room and held the door for Sophia Lamb. He'll see you now, Dr. Lamb, Diane said, as if wondering why he was seeing her. Splendid. It's been a long journey. Mike, I'm curious to find the final chamber of this great nautilus shell of a city. Ryan stood politely as she strode in. Dr. Lamb carried herself like the educated, well-heeled elite professional she was. He knew protocol would matter with her. She was tall, almost cruelly thin, her blonde hair coiffed into large curls atop her head. She had a long neck and a narrow face with stark bone structure. Icy blue eyes behind stylish, horn-rimmed glasses, lips darkly rouged. She wore a navy blue dress suit with a sharp white collars and dark blue pumps. Welcome to Rapture, Miss Lamb. Won't you have a seat? I hope your journey wasn't too exhausting. It's a pleasure to have you join us in our brave new world. She sat in the chair across from him, crossing her long pale legs. Brave new world, a reader of Shakespeare. The Tempest, was it not? Her long, slender fingers expertly extracted a platinum cigarette case from her small handbag as she went on, looking blandly at him. Oh, brave new world, that was such creatures in it. Are you surprised, Miss Lamb, that I'm familiar with Shakespeare? Ryan asked, coming round the desk to light her cigarette with a gold lighter. She blew smoke at the ceiling and shrugged. No, you're a wealthy man. You can afford to educate yourself. It was not an obvious criticism, yet somehow it was condescending. But she smiled, and he saw a glint of charisma. I must say, she went on, glancing round, this place is remarkable, quite astonishing, and yet no one seems to know about it. As few as we can manage, we work hard at keeping it secret, and we shall require you to keep it secret too, Miss Lamb. Or should I call you Dr. Lamb? He waited for her to say, Oh, just call me Sophia. But she didn't. She merely nodded, just faintly. Ryan cleared his throat. You are well aware of the driving forces behind Rapture, its philosophy, its plan, the great chain. Yes, but I can't claim to completely understand your operative philosophy. I am, of course, attracted by the possibilities of a new society that has no interference from the outside world. A self-sustaining colony that might rediscover human possibilities. The possibility of a society free from the warmongering of the upper world. I understand you were in Hiroshima when I was in a sheltered outlying place, but yes, people I sometimes worked with were burnt to shadows on the walls of their homes. Her eyes held a flat horror at the memory. If the modern world were a patient in my care, she shook her head, I would diagnose it suicidal. Yes, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they were a large part of the reason we built Rapture. I suspected you might understand our imperative after seeing what happened there firsthand. I'm certain the surface will commit nuclear suicide in time, Dr. Lamb. 1 generation, 2, 3, it will happen, and when it does, Rapture will be safe, here below. Self-sufficient and thriving. Rapture is deliverance. She tapped her cigarette ash on the brass floor ashtray beside her chair, nodding eagerly now. That is the great appeal for me, deliverance, a new chance to remake society into something innately good. Everyone has a duty to the world, Mr. Ryan, and we've lost all that up above in all the grubbing chaos of that perverse civilization. Ryan frowned, not exactly understanding her, but before he could ask her to elucidate, she went on. And I was gratified to hear that everyone has equal opportunity here, including women, presumably. She glanced at him questioningly. In ordinary society, the male hierarchy crushes our dreams. They see a woman with a spark, She crushed her cigarette out angrily in the ashtray. And they crush it out. Lady doctors, as they call them, are sometimes tolerated, but real advancement for a woman in the field, no. Oh yes, I see. Ryan thoughtfully stroked his mustache with the ball of his thumb. Theoretically, everyone in Rapture started on an equal footing. Everyone could rise to the top with hard work, enterprise, talent, ruthless dedication to the simple, liberating power of free enterprise, even women. He'd invited Sophia Lamb to Rapture because she'd graduated at the top of her class. She was said to have written brilliant theses, which Ryan hadn't had the time to read, and to have shown a fearlessness in psychiatric experimentation. Scientific fearlessness was axiomatic to Rapture. You can compete with the rest of us here, Ryan said firmly, as much to convince himself as her. But of course your initial work would be to evaluate Rapture, help us develop a means of preparing the public for the future. More pressingly, some residents may be developing psychological problems, little personal difficulties that bubble up from the isolation down here. Your first task will be to diagnose those problems and suggest a solution. Oh, of course. That is quite understood, but later, if I want to develop my own institute here in Rapture. Ah yes, that would be splendid. Why shouldn't people have a psychiatric doctor to consult with? A whole institute for self-exploration. Or perhaps for redefining the self, she murmured. She stood. If you'll excuse me, I'd like to be shown my quarters. The trip here has been a lot to absorb. I need to change, rest a bit. And I'll need a full tour of Rapture. I'll start my diagnosis right away, this evening. Good. I'll have Chief Sullivan send over his files about problem people, the little malcontents cropping up, the complainers, and so on. You can start with those. Neptune's Bounty, Rapture, 1950. Bridget Tenenbaum was walking down the chilly dock toward the water, thinking that perhaps she might get some fresh fish for dissection. If they were iced, she could extract their genetic material with some hope that it might be intact. She didn't have a definite contract with Sinclair Solutions anymore, but she could still use their lab for after hours, since she had the door combination. The tale of her attempt to extract semen from one of the submariners with a large syringe had gotten her dropped. Unreasonably, she felt, from Sinclair's research labs. Certainly she'd used bad judgment, implying she wanted something else from the man's evil-smelling genitals. Perhaps she'd thrust the needle into his gonad rather too vigorously, but for him to run screaming from the lab, naked from the waist down, the syringe dangling from his groin, trailing blood and shrieking, "That crazy bitch put a spike in my goddamn nuts," seemed like an overreaction. Since then, she'd scarcely seen Rapture's founder, nor had she been able to get an appointment with the man. There was always an excuse from that snippy Diane McClintock. Sometimes she wished she were back in the camp, working with her mentor. At least they had a real creative freedom. Bridget sighed and tugged her coat closer around her shoulders. It was always nippy down here, in the strange, underwater docks. Kind of artificial cavern, really, within Rapture, filled with water, where the delivery boats pulled up loaded with fish and other approved goods brought from the submarine bays. The docks were wooden, the walls and ceiling were metal. The water lapped at the pylons with a strange, hollow, echoing whisper. A constable and a black man who seemed to be a deputy were walking past, both of them looking at her curiously. She saw a couple dock workers in heavy pea jackets standing on the pier below her, waiting for a small tugboat-like vessel to pull up so they could offload it. They were amusing themselves as they waited, tossing a ball back and forth. She recognized both of the men. She'd seen them under Dr. Souchong's hands. He tried to cure one of them, Stiffy, of a partial paralysis, and the other one saw her first. He was a stubby-nosed man with a wind-burned face, but his face went white when he saw Tenenbaum. He dropped the ball and clapped both his hands on his genitals. "No, you don't, lady. You ain't getting near him." He backed away from her, shaking his head. Lady. Don't be such a fool," she called out wearily, searching for the right English words. "I am not here for you. I want fresh fish." "You're calling them fish now, are you?" the man demanded, backing away and falling off the dock into the water. He got up, sputtering, spitting water. It was only 4 feet deep down here. "Aha, Archie." The other fisherman called gleefully to him, going back to pick up the ball. Finally got that bath you've been avoiding. Screw you, stiffy, Archie called off, splashing off toward the approaching boat. Hi there, give me a hand. I'm coming aboard. Ah, what you scared of a little skinny dame for? Stiffy yelled, laughing. She approached Stiffy, putting a professional, officious manner so that he wouldn't try to become too familiar. You thought the ball, it is very unusual for you, no? She asked, staring at his hands. She stood by and observed when Sushong had examined him. Your hands, one paralyzed, the other only half working. This I remember. You carry some things on your shoulder, not do so much work with your hands. Sure, that's why they call me Stiffy. I got another kind of stiffy lady if you're... She gave him her severest frown. Do not trifle with me. I wish only to know. How can you catch ball now, with fingers that were paralyzed? Dr. Suchong repaired your hands, yes? Suchong? Hell no. Made a lot of excuses. Funniest thing, we had a net full of fish. See, I was scooping them out of the net, sorting them out. Not much I could do anyhow. There was some kind of sea slug mixed in with them, flopping about. Weirdest looking little slug you ever saw. Little bastard bit me on the hand. Sniffy chortled. He didn't seem angry about it at all. I didn't even know how they could bite. Well, my hands got kind of swole, but when the smell went down, he looked at his hands in renewed wonder. They started to come to life. He tossed the ball in the air and deftly caught it. You see that? Before that little bastard bit me, I couldn't do that. No way, no how. I think it was sea slug that released paralysis. Something in that bite. I could feel it spreading out like in my hand. Indeed. She peered at his hands, saw the curious bite marks. If only I had this creature. Who can find another such sea slug? I got the same one, chucked in a bucket of seawater. It was such a crazy looking little thing, I actually thought I could maybe sell in one of you scientist types. You want to buy it? Well, perhaps I do. Sophia Lamb's office, 1950. I guess I shouldn't have brought my kids to Rapture. But they told me that we had to come here together, the whole family or nothing. They said they needed skills with a boiler. I'd be taken care of and made a pile of dough. Dr. Sophia Lamb was watching a middle-aged man in the workman's overalls pacing back and forth in her office, wringing his hands. Wouldn't you like to relax on the couch as we work on this, Mr. Glidden? No, I can't, Doc, Glidden muttered. He sniffled as if trying not to cry. His eyes were bruised, looking from fatigue. His thin lips quivered. His big hands were reddened from his work in the geothermal plant. I need to go back home. You see, my wife, my kids, they're alone in the new apartment, if you can call it apartment. A dump's what it is. A lot of shifty characters around there. I feel like the kids ain't safe in that place. We're having to share it with another family. There ain't enough housing in this crazy town. Nothing I can afford, I mean. They said they'd be more housing here and better pay. Thought it was a road to riches thing, like the Comstock mine. They talked like. He bit his lip. She nodded, shifted in her chair, and made a note. She'd heard a similar story from a number of workers she interviewed as part of her project for Ryan. If you feel you were misled about what would happen here? Yeah, Glidden broke off, stopping in the center of the room, staring at her suspiciously. You work for Ryan, right? Well, in a manner of speaking. So no, I wasn't. What'd you say, misled? He licked his lips. They were straight with me. It's all right, you can say what you really think, Sophia said, reassuringly. It's true that these therapeutic sessions will be summed up in a report, but I'm not naming specific people in my report. It'll be about the trends. Yeah? How come this therapy thing here is free? And when it comes up, my wife says I'm all tense and like that. But free? Nothing's free in Rapture. Really, you can trust me, Mr. Glidden. So you say, but supposing I get fired because of this, maybe they blackball me, so I got no work, and then what? You can't leave Rapture. You can't leave. Not even you, Doc. You think he'll let you leave if you want to? No. Oh, well, Her voice trailed off. She hadn't given much thought to leaving Rapture. There seemed so many possibilities here. What if she did try to leave? What would Ryan do? She was afraid to find out. I'm in the same boat, so to speak, with you, Miss Glidden, she smiled. Or under the same boats. He crossed his arms in front of him, shook his head. He wasn't going to say anything else. She wrote, "Subjects are typical in mistrust of Ryan and feeling of alienation, social claustrophobia at boiling point for some, financial status a key factor, higher incomes show less anxiety." She underlined higher incomes and said, "You can go now, Mr. Glidden. Thanks for coming in." She watched Glidden rush from the room, then she went to her desk, unlocked a drawer, took out her journal. She usually preferred it to the audio diaries. She sat down and wrote, "If the Rapture experiment fails, as I suspect it will, another social experiment will be carried out in this strange undersea hothouse. The very conditions that make Rapture explosive, its sequestering from the outside world, its inequalities, could be the source for radical social transformation. It's something to consider. The danger of even contemplating such a social experiment is enormous. However, I must not let this journal fall into Sullivan's hands." Sophia put the pen down and wondered if what she was contemplating was too risky. Politics, power, an idea that was becoming an idea fixe. Possibly it was sheer madness. But madness or not, it had been growing like a child within her at the time she'd been in Rapture. She'd been quietly gestating the notion that what Rapture could destroy, men like Glidden, it could save, if were guided by a new leader. She could turn Rapture sharply to the left, from within. Dangerous thinking, but the idea would not go away. It had a life of its own. Pumping Station 5, 1950. Bill McDonough was switching on a drainage pump 71 to pump out the insulation and ventilation spaces in the walls of the Mermaid Lounge when Andrew Ryan walked into Station 5. Rapture's visionary genius was smiling, but seemed a bit distant, distracted. "Bill, how about taking a quick inspection walk with me, as we're both near Little Eden, or are you handling an emergency?" "No emergency, Mr. Ryan, just a bit of an adjustment." "There, that's done it." Soon they were strolling along the concourse of Little Eden Plaza, walking past a gracious facade of the Pearl Hotel. People ambled by, couples arm in arm, shoppers with bags. Ryan seemed pleased by this evidence of thriving commerce. Some of the shoppers nodded shyly to Mr. Ryan. One rather matronly woman asked for his autograph, which he patiently provided before he and Bill hurried on. "Anything you're particularly concerned with round here, Mr. Ryan?" Bill asked as they passed the Plaza Hedon apartments. "There's talk of a chemical leakage. We had some kind of complaints at the shop in the area, so I thought I'd look into both at once. I don't care much for complaints, but I'd like to know what's going on, and had some free time." They came to a corner that was covered with what appeared to be a green-black chemical leaking from the seam in a bulkhead. It smelled of petroleum and solvents. "There it is, Bill. Were you aware of it?" "I am, sir. That's why I was adjusting the valves in the Station 5, trying to cut back on flushing so I could reduce this here toxic overflow. There's a factory upstream, you might say, or anyways upstairs from here. Turns out new signs and the like. Justice Sinclair owns the place, what do I remember. They used a lot of chemicals, dump them in the outpipes, but they corrode the pipes, and the solvents work their way out on the sidewalk. What might be worse, the rest of it gets dumped out at Rapture. Mr. Ryan, I checked on it. These chemicals, they go out in the ocean and down the current. Could be they all get mixed up with the fish down here. Could end up eating these chemicals when we're eating those fish." Ryan was looking at him with arched eyebrows. "Really, Bill? How ridiculously alarmist. Why, the ocean is vast. We couldn't possibly pollute it. It would all be diluted." "Right enough, sir. Well, some of it's acclimates, well, with currents and eddies, and if we create enough of a mess..." "Bill, forget it. We've got sufficient concerns right here inside Rapture. We'll have to replace those pipes with something stronger, and we'll charge Augustus for it." Bill gave it one more try. "Just thought it'd be better if he'd used chemicals that weren't so corrosive, Gov. Could be done, I reckon, if..." Ryan laughed softly. "Bill, listen to yourself. You ask me to regulate industrial waste next? Why, old Will Clark up in Montana created a wasteland around his mines and refineries. Didn't anyone suffer?" He cleared his throat, seeming to recollect something. "Well, perhaps some did, yes, but the world of commerce is reckless. It's Like a hungry child that keeps growing and never quite grows up, it becomes a giant, Bill, and people must get out of its way or be stomped on by its 10-league boots, or I'll look into stronger drainage pipes outside factories to prevent a mess on the sidewalk. Ryan Industries will build Rapture, and Rapture will build the factories. Come along, Bill, this way. Here's another problem. They'd come to a shop in Little Eden Plaza called Gravenstein's Green Groceries. Across the street, more of a wide passageway, and a little ways down was another larger business called Sherp's Shop Mart. Reeking garbage of all sorts was piled up higher in the gutter around Gravenstein's. Bill shook his head, seeing every kind of garbage imaginable, most of it decaying. The fish heads were especially pungent. Shep's, by contrast, looked immaculate. A small man in a grocer's apron rushed out of Gravenstein's as they approached. He had a hatchet face and a flap-like ears, intense brown eyes, curly brown hair. "Mr. Ryan," he shouted, wringing his hands as he ran up to him. "You came! I must have sent 100 requests. Here you are at last." Ryan frowned. He didn't respond well to implied criticism. "Well, why have you let all this trash pile up here? That's hardly the spirit of the great chain." "Me letting it pile up? I didn't. He did. Shep did it. I'll pay any reasonable price for trash pickup, but he..." Gravenstein pointed across the street at the big man stepping out of Shep's. Gordon. He wore a big blue suit, his swag belly straining out of his jacket. He had a jowly face, an unpleasant toothed grin, and an enormous cigar in his hand. Seeing Gravenstein pointing at him accusingly, Shep crossed the street, shaking his head despairingly and managing a good deal of swagger despite the obesity. He pointed at Gravenstein with his cigar and as he walked up. "What's this little lawyer telling you about Mr. Ryan?" Ryan ignored Shep. "Why should this man be responsible for your trash, Gravenstein?" Bill could guess why. He remembered that Shep here had diversified. "First of all," the small man said, shaking, clearly trying to not shout at Ryan, "it's not all mine." "Heh," Shep said. "Prove it." "Some of it's mine, but some of it's his, Mr. Ryan. As for what's mine, he runs the only trash collection in service around here. He bought it 2 months ago. He's using it to run me out of business. He's charging me 10 times what he charges everyone else for trash collection." Bill was startled. 10 times? Shep chuckled and tapped cigar ash in the pile of garbage. "That's the marketplace. We have no restraints here, Mr. Ryan. No price controls. Anyone can do anything they can buy and run it how they like." "The market won't bear that kind of pricing," Bill pointed out. "He only charges me that price," Gravenstein insisted. "He's my only grocery competitor. He's got more business than I do, and it's not enough. He wants to corner the grocery business around here. He knows if garbage piles up because I can't afford to pay to take it away, nobody will come to my shop at my place. And nobody does." "Looks like you'll have to move it out yourself," Ryan said, shrugging. "Who'll look after the shop while I do that? It's a long ways to dump chute. I don't have to do that, Mr. Ryan. He shouldn't be gouging me, trying to run me out of business." "Shouldn't he?" Ryan mused. "It's not really a business practice I admire, but the great marketplace is like a thriving jungle, where some survive and become king of their territory, and some don't. It's a way of nature. Survival of the fittest weeds out the weaklings, Gravenstein. I advise you to find some means of competing, or move out." "Mr. Ryan, please, shouldn't we have a public trash collection service?" Ryan raised his eyebrows. "Public? That sounds like Roosevelt or Stalin. Go to one of the Shep's competitors." "They won't come clear over here, Mr. Ryan. This man controls trash pickup in the whole area. He's out to get me. While he's threatening to buy the building and have me evicted, Mr. Ryan. I believe in competition and hard work, but no more whining, Gravenstein. We do not fix prices here. We do not regulate. We do not say who can buy what." "You heard that, Gravenstein?" Shep sneered. "Welcome to the real world of business." "Please, Mr. Ryan," Gravenstein said, hands balling to fists at his sides. "When I came down here, I was supposed to have an opportunity to expand, to grow, to live in a place without taxes. I gave up on everything to come here. Where am I to go if he drives me out? Where can I go? Where can I go?" A muscle in Ryan's face twitched. He looked at Gravenstein with narrowed eyes. His voice became chilled steel. "Deal with it as a man should, Gravenstein. Do not whine like a child." Ravenstein stood there, shaking helplessly, pale with rage, and he ran back into his store. Bill's heart went out to him, but Ryan was right, wasn't he? The market had to be unregulated. Still, there were other problems cropping up in Rapture from predatory types. "Say there, Ryan," Shep said. "How about coming to the office for a drink, huh?" "I think not, Shep," Ryan growled, walking away. "Come along, Bill." They strode onward, and Ryan sighed. "And man, Shep is an odious sort. He's little better than a mafioso, but the marketplace must be free. If some eggs are broken to make that omelet, well..." There was a shout from behind, and a yell of fear. Bill and Ryan turned to see Gravenstein, hands trembling, pointing a pistol at Shep in the midst of the passageway. Gravenstein shouted, "I'll deal with it like a man, all right." "No," Shep shouted, stumbling back, the cigar flopping from his mouth. Gravenstein fired twice. Shep shrieked, clutching himself, staggering with each shot, and fell like a great sack of dropped groceries onto the passageway floor. "Damn it," Ryan grunted. "That now is against the rules. I've constabled on the man." But that would not be necessary, as Bill watched Gravenstein put the gun to his own head and pulled the trigger. Sophia Lamb's office, 1950. Sophia Lamb balanced her notebook on her knee, poised her pen, and said, "Tell me about this feeling of being trapped, Marjorie." There's one way I can get out this burg, Doc," Marjorie said in a flat voice. "If I kill myself." She sat up on the therapy couch and chewed a knuckle. She was a slender, long-legged, brown-haired woman in a simple blue dress, worn-out white flats, a small, shabby blue velvet hat. The paint on her fingernails hadn't been renewed for a long time. They were patchy red. Margie had a sweet, slightly freckled face with large brown eyes, her face going a bit round and her belly pooching out. She was a couple months pregnant, but maybe not. Maybe killing herself doesn't have to get you out either. Her large brown eyes seemed to get larger as she added, in a whisper, "I've heard there's ghosts in Rapture." Sophia leaned back in her chair and shook her head. "Ghosts are in people's minds. So is the idea that you have to escape. That's just a notion that's haunting you. And after what you've been through..." "What I've been through? Maybe I got only myself to blame." She wiped tears away and took a deep breath. "They say I'd have a career as an entertainer here. I should have known better, Doc. My mom always said, you'll get a free ride in this world. She was right. Ma died when I was 16. My pop was long gone, so I was on my own, working as a taxi dancer when I got recruited for Rapture. I come here full of hopes and dreams, end up in that strip joint in Fort Frolic. Eve's Garden, what a joke. All the big shots come there grinning like apes at the girls. I've seen Mr. Ryan there even, when he got interested in Jasmine Jolene. What air she put on, I can't tell you. The manager of that place, I wouldn't have sex with him, so he fired me. It's not supposed to be part of my job." "Naturally not," Sophia wrote. Consistent pattern of disappointed expectations and patience. "So I tried to get work in some other places in Rapture, waitressing, you know. Nope, no work. Sold most of my clothes, ran out of money, ran out of food. Living on stuffed caged out of trash cans. Asked to be taken back to the surface. No way, sister, they tell me. Never thought I'd ever end up as a whore. Little dancing for money, sure, but this, selling my asses to those fishermen down in Neptune's Bounty. All the damn day in the bar, or on my back in the rooms they got out behind. And Fontaine, he said I have to give him a percentage. My mom always said so. I get stubborn, and I told him to go to hell on a sled. He tells that Reggie to knock me around." Sophia clicked her tongue sympathetically and wrote, "No recourse for those stricken by bad luck. No WPA here. Nothing to catch those who fall. Enormous potential for social ferment." "You're in my care now," Sophia said soothingly. Her heart was wrenched at Margie's story. "I can even offer you a job." "What kind of work?" "Gardening, assisting. I intend to start a new program I'm calling Dionysus Park. Nothing you'll have to be ashamed of, but I will need something from you. I need your trust, your complete trust." Margie sniffled, and her eyes welled with tears. "Gee, if you help me. Gosh, you got it, Doc. I trust you from here to the stars." "Good," Sophia smiled. "If you could get people to trust you, really trust you, you could get their loyalty too. And she would need loyalty, unthinking loyalty, for what she had in mind. A gradual revolution, first in mind and then in fact, transforming Rapture from within. Between Neptune's Bounty and Olympus Heights, 1951. Frank Fontaine felt like a fat kid with the keys to a candy store, gliding through the sea in his private, radio-controlled bathysphere from Neptune's Bounty to the station for Olympus Heights and Mercury Suites, past neon signs for several shops, including one of his own. Fontaine reflected on what a feast Rapture was for a man like him. Ryan kept business regulations to an absolute minimum. If you had enough Rapture dollars to hire a space from Ryan Industries, you could open pretty much any business you wanted. Fontaine had even cultivated one of Ryan's bookkeepers, Marjorie Dustin. As long as he diddled Marjorie every so often and kicked her some cash, she cheerfully added 40% on paper to his fresh fish take. Ryan Industries was paying a 40% more fish than they received. He knew Ryan had men keeping an eye on him. That very morning, Fontaine had spotted a Russian thug, Karlovsky, following him through the lower concourse. Ryan was setting up security cameras around Rapture. Not a lot of them yet, but more were coming, and Ryan controlled them. Hard to keep a secret for long from those cameras. Fontaine watched an enormous fish with a gigantic mouth swim past. He had no idea what kind it was. I swiveled an eye to look through his bathysphere port, seeming intrigued. Fontaine shook his head, amused at how much he'd grown accustomed to living in this giant aquarium. Maybe someday when he'd gotten control of Rapture, he could use the undersea city as his base for forays onto dry land. He'd always have a place to escape to, where the cops would never find him. Fontaine caught a glimpse of one of his own subs sliding by below, heading toward the underwater wharf entrance, dragging a net full of glistening silvery fish. Silver, like silver dollars. Cash just swam along in the sea, and all you had to do was find some sucker to scoop it up for you. Sometimes they thought he was the only guy in the world who wasn't a sucker. People in Rapture were getting sick of eating fish. Fontaine had started smuggling in beef, which was all but impossible to get in Rapture otherwise. Shortage was opportunity. A lot of these saps were even feeling short on religion, so Fontaine brought Bibles, which was sure to make Ryan angry. Ryan hated religion, whereas Fontaine simply laughed at it. The bathysphere arrived at the station, locked into place, and Fontaine emerged. He hurried past a group of snazzy partiers heading through the metro for one of the nightclubs. Their headlights were dimming, as they were designed to do in the evening, to give people in Rapture a more normal sense of night and day. Fontaine took a tram up to Olympus Heights and then the elevator to his place in Mercury Suites. He arrived just in time to grab a quick bite before his meeting. He walked through marble-lined rooms, past small brown statues of dancing women and comforting paintings of New York City scenes. He did miss New York. He sat at a marble-topped gold-legged table by a big window looking out on the blue lamplit sea, where glowing purple jellyfish wafted like skirts on invisible dancing girls. His cook, Antoine, made him beef bourguignon with seaweed and a few lowly leaves of lettuce on the side. He drank a glass of pretty dull Worley wine, then a doorbell rang. Reggie let him in. "The boss is here," Reggie said. Reggie ushered Dr. Souchong and Bridget Tenenbaum into the sitting room. "Keep an eye on the door, Reggie," Fontaine said. "We don't want to be interrupted." "Sure thing, boss." Dr. Yi Souchong was still wearing a long white lab coat over a shabby suit peppered with rusty spots that looked like bloodstains. Bridget Tenenbaum wore a calf-length blue dress. She walked somewhat awkwardly in red pumps, clearly unused to them. She was a young woman, the wonder kind they called her. Her face, however, its angularity reflecting Belarusia, was marked by experience. There was a cold distance in it. Fontaine understood that distance. He didn't let anyone close to him either, but there was something almost robotic in her movements. She never met his eyes, though sometimes he felt her watching him. She obviously dressed up for the meeting with a touch of lipstick, awkwardly applied. She wasn't so bad, despite her tobacco-stained teeth and chewed-down fingernails. As they sat on ornate sofas across from each other, Fontaine ran a hand over his bald head, wondering if he should grow out his hair. But women seemed to like him bald. "May I smoke, please?" she asked. "Sure you can. Have one of mine." He paused for the ornate silver cigarette box he kept on the coral and glass coffee table. She took a cigarette with trembling fingers. Inserting it into an ivory holder she produced from a small pocket in her dress. Fontaine lit it with a silver lighter shaped cunningly like a seahorse. She glanced at him as she blew smoke toward the ceiling, then looked quickly away. Both the scientists, sitting widely apart, seemed quite stiff and formal. Seemed like they didn't trust him. They'd get over it when he started shoveling mounds of money over them. Something nice and cozy about a blanket of cash. Sushang was a lean Korean, wearing wire-rimmed glasses. He must have been twice Tenenbaum's age. She didn't seem at all in awe of him, though he had a string of degrees. "How about some wine?" Fontaine asked. She said yes, and Sushang said no at precisely the same instant. Sushang laughed nervously. Tenenbaum just stared fixedly at the end of her cigarette. Fontaine got wine for himself and her and said, "Dr. Sushang, I understand you've been working for Ryan Industries." Sushang sighed. "Sushang works for himself. There's the Sushang Institute and Laboratories, but contracts with Ryan and Sinclair, yes." "And Miss Tenenbaum, you're working as a free agent." "Yes, that is good description." She looked past him, over his shoulder, as if she were trying to give the impression of looking at him without quite being able to. "This is where I say, you're wondering why I called you here," Fontaine said, putting down his wine glass. "I asked you to here because I'm thinking there's bigger opportunities in this science stuff than I ever thought of. I've got people who work for Ryan giving me the inside skinny, but I hear you two are feeling somewhat frustrated." Tenenbaum bobbed her head, her eyes flickering at everything but Fontaine. "This is true, what you say. Ryan says to work on anything, but we should cost money. Financial support is, what is the word? Inconsistent." She flicked her eyes at Sushang. "Dr. Sushang does not wish to make Mr. Ryan angry, but we both need more." Sushang frowned. "Women do not speak for me," but he didn't deny it was true. They were ripe and ready to pluck. "Well now," Fontaine said, "given the right situation, the three of us could start our own little research team. Sushang, I understand you're working on a new kind of tobacco." "Not precisely." Sushang's accent was heavy. It took Fontaine a moment to translate precisely into precisely. "Sushang alters genetics of another plant to make nicotine into sugarcane. We will extract and make nicotine candy." "Clever," Fontaine said, grinning. "Yeah, I've been reading up on this whole genetics business. You can make all kinds of things by switching genes around, seems to me. Maybe miniature cattle could keep down here somewhere for fresh beef, yeah? And from what I hear, you could switch a person's genes around. You can make changes in people, right?" Her frown was deepened into a scowl, which she directed at the floor. "What do you know of that?" "Just rumors that you're paying for some kind of special sea slug. I hear you brought 10 of them." She nodded once briskly. "I would buy more if I could. No ordinary sea slug. A species living miracle. I asked Ryan to fund these experiments. He was not listening." She sniffed, taking her cigarette butt from the holder and dropping it vaguely toward the ashtray. It fell onto the table and smoldered there. She gnawed at a nail, her eyes unfocused, seeming halfway in another world, obvious as Fontaine reflexively put the cigarette out in the ashtray. Making a sudden, awkward, pushing gesture with her hand, she went on. "Fine, he put me off. Maybe later, all this sort of thing." "You're on the point of a breakthrough?" "Perhaps." She glanced at Sushang. He shrugged. Fontaine smiled. "Then it is something I want to invest in. I'll pay well for a stake, and Ryan doesn't have to know about it. When you're ready, you can come work for me completely, both you. I figured this genetics dodge could be a wave into the future. I've got a few things in mind. 2 of you could work on it. Sushang could bring you into his lab, and I could pay you a salary for now. Maybe get this guy Alexander involved. No, I don't want Ryan to know about any of this. I want it on the QT, see? He'll move in, take everything we come up with otherwise. He'll find some excuse to keep all the rights to himself." Tenenbaum smiled crookedly. "Meanwhile, Ryan pays for Suchong's expensive lab, yes?" "Why not let him pay for the big stuff?" Fontaine said, toying with his wine glass. I'm doing good here, but Ryan controls more resources in Rapture. He's got deeper pockets for now. So Shang needs more money, research money, yes? Said the Korean abruptly, but also needs something else. He put his hands on his knees, leaned stiffly forward, his eyes washing out behind his glasses as they caught the sea lights from the window. Yes, they both think of altering human genes, difficult to do without humans. What Sushong really needs, young humans. Their cells have a much more possibility, but everyone crazy about children overprotect them. He made a face. About creatures, little children. Don't much like kids, huh? Sushong grew up in a household where my father is a very poor servant. Only children were the brats of rich men. They treat me like a dog. Children are cruel, must be trained like animals. Children, all are lost creatures, Bridget Tenenbaum said softly, her voice almost inaudible. You were pretty young when you first started working as a scientist, Miss Tenenbaum, Fontaine prompted. Understand what makes him tick and he can wind up in their clock. Set him for whatever time you want. How'd that happen? She took a sip of wine, lit another cigarette, and seemed to gaze into another time. I was a German prison camp, only 16 years old. Important German doctor. He makes experiment. Sometimes she makes a scientific error. I tell him of this error and this makes him angry. But then he asks, how can a child know such thing? I tell him, sometimes I just know. He screams at me. Then why tell me? She smiled stiffly. Well, I said, if you're going to do such things, at least you should do them properly. She took a drag from her cigarette and made a ghostly little smile. A ghost of a cigarette smoke rose from her parted lips as she let a smoke drift slowly at her lungs. Sushong rolled his eyes. She tells me that story many times. Fontaine cleared his throat. I don't know how I can get you the kind of experimental subjects you're talking about right away, Doc, Fontaine said. It might draw too much attention. What I can get you is some grown-up guys who run afoul of the rules around here. A couple of guys that disappear from detention. Who's gonna care? I give them out they escaped and got drowned trying to get out of the city. Sushong made a single brisk nod. That can be useful. So, supposing you could find a way to control genes, Fontaine said, toying with his wine glass. Is it true what I heard, that genes control how we age? Again, Sushong said no, and Tenenbaum said yes at the same moment. Sushong grunted in irritation. This is Tenenbaum's theory. Genes only one factor. Genes, they're almost everything, Tenenbaum said, sniffing. But I mean, you could help a man stay young, Fontaine persisted. Maybe change his body in some kind of way. Give him more hair, stronger arms, and longer, if we could sell that and give a guy, I don't know, more talents, more abilities. Yes, Tenenbaum said. This is something my mentor talked about. To enhance the man's powers, to make him the Ubermensch, the Superman. A Superman or woman. Many risks in this, but yes, with time and much experimentation. Where Sushong get money and experimental subjects, Mr. Fontaine? Sushong asked. Fontaine shrugged. I'll get you the first set research payment tomorrow. We worked out a contract just between us. Fontaine paused, reflecting that if he had to give them shares in the business, it might cost him a lot of money in the long run. But once he had the basic product started, technology going, he could hire other researchers cheaper. Then he could get rid of Sushong and Tenenbaum, one way or another. He smiled his best, most convincing, most open-hearted smile at them. Never fared to lure the suckers in. I'll get you the contract and money first, but we've got to do it carefully. Free enterprise or not, Ryan watches everything. Thank you. That was part 7 of Bioshock Rapture. Thank you for listening, and good night.